Well, good morning, friends, and welcome to the Biblical Perspective. Thanks for joining me this morning. We've been talking about the prophetic place of China and where they seem to fit in this pattern of the end times. A lot of people are talking about China. I'm not the only one. Matter of fact, if you look around the internet, you'll find folks like Tipping Point dealing with it, the place of China in Bible prophecy, and asking that question, are they there or not? Well, last week we were concluding absolutely they are. If you look in Revelation, they seem to be part of that definition, if not the primary part of the group known as the kings of the east. As you look straight from Jerusalem, your eyeballs would carry right through Persia and India into Red China. They seem to be a part of this end timed beast that is going to control the world in the end. Well, does China have a plan to control the world? Well, guess what? Absolutely, they do. How's that plan going? It's ahead of schedule, so better than expected. So, as we're looking at this today, we're going to see how they fit into that. Also, when you recognize the Old Testament prophecy of Daniel, and you see how Daniel describes that end time beast as being one with 7 heads and 10 horns. I can say that I am about 99.5% positive that China's leader represents one of those 10 horns. As we get to today, some interesting things have been happening prophetically all around us that point to this relationship of China with the Ezekiel war, the war described in Ezekiel chapter 38, which doesn't by definition involve China, but yet I'm going to show you the connections. Because on that map of those all those red nations that have something to do with attacking Israel in that final war, two of the key nations there described biblically would be Persia and Togarmah, which would correspond to biblical Iran. The biblical Persia and Togarmah would correspond to modern day Iran and Turkey. So, as we look at those two nations, what's interesting is that recently both have been in the news with communist China. In particular, Communist China is developing a brand new relationship with what used to be a strong NATO nation, Turkey. On paper, they're still a member of NATO, but they've been shaking hands with Russia and China, allowing infrastructure, new agreements, new trade agreements left and right. It seems like they're being swept into that block rapidly. And they, of course, have already made an agreement with the other key nation there, Persia. So Erdogan has had this same photo op with the leader of Iran as well, something that had never happened before. So we're seeing those descriptions, if you want to go back and look at them more intently in Ezekiel 38, those descriptions of the allies that are going to come against Israel are described there in detail, and that alliance never before in the history of all mankind, never before has that alliance existed. It exists today. It was strengthened even more last week as the connections with Iran and China seem to be growing. And those connections are quite important because what they are saying is, United States, you go back into the JCPOA if you've got any sense. But look, it doesn't even matter if you don't. We're going to trade with Iran. They'll get everything they need from us. We're going to be their ally over here. We're going to make sure they are fully equipped with everything that they need. Now, that's a scary thought because we know Iran's ultimate purpose, as they have declared ever since the Ayatollah's revolution in 1979, has been to destroy the nation of Israel. So we know that plan seems to be lining up exactly as Bible prophecy said it would. And this past week, what Iran and China did was even more amazing. They signed a 25-year agreement, cooperation agreement with each other, basically snubbing the United States and saying, hey, we don't care what you're doing. We've got this. We're going to control our side of the world, and you just worry about yourself over there. Well, there's even more to it than that. And as we look at this 25-year deal with Iran, it is just a part of this gigantic initiative that's being played out by China. But between a couple of things called the Belt and Road Initiative and their String of Pearls strategy for them to completely control their side of the world. Now, if you're not completely aware of it, the Belt and Road Initiative is the idea that, kind of leaning on that old Silk Road idea from ancient history, that China can manipulate trade routes and control the entire eastern side of the world's map. Doesn't take much imagination to see how they're going to do it because they've had it in play for many years now. They are buying up key seaports, they're buying up trade routes, they're gathering allies around them by just going into countries and saying, hey, can we build you a power plant? How about some roads? How about this, the other? And connecting all the dots so that they can basically transport goods all over that side of the world easily and continue to build their economy, which will surpass the United States as the largest economy in the world very shortly in this decade. So their plan is really coming full circle, and they're able to control this side of the world. So it's no secret that they would want to control both the trade routes, as you can see, one of those little black lines that goes right through Turkey and Iran. They would not only want to control that trade route, but those countries that are involved and have a close relationship with them. And if someone wants to get in the way of that, especially like that tiny little nation of Israel, a country the size of New Jersey, if you can imagine that, then they'll just have to deal with them and make sure they are out of the way. So China's world domination plan is right on target, and they fit perfectly, again, in that description of the kings of the East described in Revelation, and one of those 10 horns that rises to dominate the world in the end times. And of course, they are all openly, no secrets about this, openly helping build the economies of the two major players that are going to attack Israel, Turkey and Iran. Now, when you get to this, I want to talk about where America is in this, because a lot of folks are saying, well, what's happened to America? Why aren't we standing up against China anymore? Well, the fact is, we have been kind of pushed aside for a reason. A plan that's been in place for some time is just following every step logically to turn the United States of America into what some call the Western People's Republic of China. In particular, I want to call your attention to an article. This one's been floating all over the internet in print. But if you want to really catch a good background on it, I would suggest the YouTube channel China in Focus. They'll give you the whole background of this in ways that details I'm not going to go into today. When you say what has happened to America, all you have to do is listen to the speech by this communist Chinese Communist Party insider detailing China's plan to dominate the world. He talks about how China, through quiet, covert actions, can literally take over the United States of America, and Americans won't even know it's happening. His name is Jim Canrong, and Jin Canrong is probably the wrong way to pronounce that. I understand I'm doing this with the southern accent of United States English, probably not the way to pronounce his name, but this particular man with a very high position in the Chinese university talks about the secret tricks. Matter of fact, in the speech, he said, keep it to yourself. Don't talk to others about it. But yet, of course, everything gets out these days. And he talks about how China is manipulating the world, especially for one singular purpose. So it can surpass the United States of America and make America instead servant to it. As he begins to speak about these things, he describes, first of all, the object. The object is for China to become the world's leader before 2049. And as of right now, they are way ahead of schedule as to what their plan was to be able to dominate everything by 2049. America's their only obstacle to that plan. They believe the U.S. can be taken over. Matter of fact, he compares the United States. He said, we don't destroy the United States. He compares us to the most capable employee in the workplace. You want to save this employee because they'll get lots done for you. they can be controlled. And so the entire objective of right now the Chinese Communist Party is not to destroy the United States, but to control her and bring her into its sphere of world domination. They said the easiest way to do this, and one of the key uh, points of their strategy, is to become intertwined in the United States of America's economy, to become so intertwined in it that the U.S. couldn't hurt China because they'd be hurting themselves. We've seen that play out just the last couple of years, even here in our own locality. Now, I'm in Winnsboro, South Carolina, a tiny little county seat town in one of the not one of the larger states, but one of the more popular states in America right now. A lot of folks are moving here. But right here in our backyard of this tiny county seat town, when I say tiny, I mean population of our town hasn't been over 4,000, I don't think, in its history. Our county, somewhere in the neighborhood of 24,000 people, even though it's got a large land mass. So we are not very big, don't seem to be very important. But let me tell you something about our county. We're the home of Element Manufacturing. I have church members that actually work there at Element. What do? They take parts from, this is a Chinese company that takes parts that are shipped here from China, then assembles them, so we can say they're assembled in the USA, to make televisions, for example, that you might hang on your wall, big widescreen TVs, and you can enjoy your football game and not think about how China is running things. Element Manufacturing right here in Winnsboro, South Carolina. Wait a minute, they're not the only Chinese influence here. And are we glad they're here? Oh, we're thrilled. They provide jobs, they provide money for our economy. What would we do without them? We'd be hurting. Other American companies have shut down and left town. So we're glad for Element to be here. But guess what, folks? They're Chinese. Secondly, there's this other big company. We had an empty Mack truck plant for years, and someone has finally occupied that building. It's M. Lilly Manufacturing, another Chinese company making those wonderful mattresses that can allow you to sleep so well. Now, M. Lilly is now made in the USA, the sign touts. And this is part of what's happening all over our country, not just in Winnsboro. Places where jobs have been lacking, this Chinese company comes in, provides jobs, health benefits. We're all thrilled to have it. We've got church members that work down there. But guess what? It's just another part of this sinister little plan that China has to try to dominate the world. It's not by accident that they are here. Matter of fact, if you want to look at something scary about the United States, all over our country, American companies are being bought up, bought out, purchased, taken over by Chinese companies. One of the most famous, of course, is Smithfield Foods. Now, Smithfield, that's an American company, isn't it? Well, yes, it was made in Virginia and started there as an American family run company. Tremendous food resources. They became a giant here in the United States, then bought out by Chinese concerns. In fact, you might remember when the CCP virus began to be spread, one of the key places it just exploded was when a group of Chinese executives of Smithfield flew in and went into South Dakota into one of the plants, and all of a sudden, everybody's got COVID-19 in the plant. Well, it was no accident because it came right over with some of the executives. I'm not saying they did it intentionally. I'm just saying that there's your China connection. As we have so many companies in the United States, just like Smithfield, that and all of the brands that it represents now owned by China or some Chinese conglomerate. Some of those that you might know about include Continental Aerospace Technologies, Strategic Hotels and Resorts, Motorola Mobility, now owned by China, Riot Games, hey, are you gamers? That's a Chinese company. The Waldorf Astoria in New York City is now owned by China. How about Legendary Entertainment? Well, when we think in terms of Legendary Entertainment, I actually had a slide on this. I don't think I got the slide in. Legendary Entertainment owns and AMC theaters. Some of the other theaters are all owned by Chinese conglomerates. you will no longer see any production from Legendary that has any anything except pro-Chinese history and or comments when referring to that nation. It's now taboo to say anything against China in any of their productions, any of their movies. Why? Well, hey, China's our daddy. They own us now. And so you're going to see more and more of this happening. Matter of fact, left and right, we're being dominated by Chinese companies. Your children are hooked on TikTok, not just your children, now adults getting on TikTok, wholly owned Chinese subsidiary that is not only working on your social media, but gathering information about American citizens left and right through that platform. So, friends, Legendary Entertainment, Smithfield Foods, as we just talked about, Ingram Micro, uh, General Electric. You think anything is an American company, surely GE. But listen, back in 2016, Haier, Chinese company, for $5.6 billion bought out the appliance division of General Electric. So, friends, left and right, China is slowly but surely accomplishing its plan to buy up both land and businesses and industries and important landmarks right here in the United States. And it's just a part of their plan that, among other things, is going to help Chinify the United States of America. Now, I want you to listen to the most scary part of this, because when Jin Kangrong was talking about the strategy, he said one of the key elements of controlling the United States is not just to become intertwined in its economy, but to influence its political system. Now, hold on to your hats. He outlined the simple way in which, by becoming intertwined in congressional districts with key manufacturing facilities and other influential aspects of our economy, that every every U.S. congressional district would have Chinese clout within it that would try to move and sway elections. They said, we've discovered most elections in the United States are rather close. Not a lot of people come out for the elections, and if you can sway a few thousand votes, you can win congressional seats and make sure that you have people favorable to our position in office. So they described the math, saying if you have this is a quote from the guy in particular, Jen said, quote, if you have a few thousand votes on your hands, you're the candidate's dad, end quote. Now, so, this strategy is working left and right. Have you wondered why we have so many wackos in Congress now? It's because many of them are beholden to the folks that are putting them in office to be pro Chinese. While the media, which apparently is already having this problem, while the media and other leftists were complaining that we had a Russia problem, which turned out to be a Russia hoax that they promoted literally for 4 solid years without any evidence. While they kept pointing at Russia, China was sneaking in here and doing exactly what they were saying Russia was doing, influencing elections, moving things in the direction they want to go, putting politicians in place that would no longer challenge them, but instead would cozy up to them. Folks, if China accomplishes its mission, so this professor says, it can buy the United States and turn it into a Western People's Republic of China. And one of the other things they want to do to try to make sure American power is uh, reduced in the world is to destabilize our own backyard. Now, they're not worried about their backyard. If you're thinking about attacking China, they have a missile defense system that reaches far out into the Pacific over a number of American possessions. They're not worried about us. They've been building their forces in the South China Sea. They've been setting themselves up to where they know they are solid all over that part of Asia. And if anything, people who have any sense in those nations allied with us, like South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines, had better get a life and understand that it is China that's going to control this part of the world. You can either have a favorable relationship with China or an adversarial one? Do you want to really have an adversarial relationship with the nation that possesses the largest navy in the world now? I don't think so. And so, while they are taking care of their own backyard, they're destabilizing ours. And the primary ways they're doing this, or so says their own Chinese leader and speaker, is to control us through things like terrorism, uh, and through immigration, allow terrorists to get into our country, destabilizing our political system and messing up our relations with key allies in the region. All things to weaken America, make it easier for them to take over, literally buy us, and eventually be the number one nation in the world. Now, biblically, that sets us up for that time described by the Bible that used to mystify many Bible prophecy teachers. They'd say, well, where's the United States in all this? Sure, the United States wouldn't just sit back and let all of this happen as is described in Bible prophecy. Oh, of course, the old United States wouldn't have allowed that. But my friends, this ain't your daddy's country anymore. It's changing fast, changing rapidly. And whereas I understand some of you are saying, look, if we'll work really hard, we can get the right people in office in 2022, and by 2024 we can take our nation back. Friends, you're not looking at the numbers, are you? You're not looking at how this strategic plan being pushed by the far left that's in cohorts with communist China. They are communist in background. They have told you they are communist in background. The leader of Black Lives Matter has said, quote, I am a trained Marxist. Their whole idea of destabilizing and weakening this nation, attacking things like the police. Really? We need to defund the police? All of these attacks are coordinated, and they're designed to make the United States a weak, second class power with China literally in control of the world in the next generation. Now, what we've got in relation to where China is, if you look at this idea of controlling, their objective is to control the Indo Pacific region. You're going to notice something. If they control this region, what do they control? They control the major trade routes that are coming out of the Straits of Hormuz, so that Iraq is literally locked away out of control of being now controlled rather by Iran and China and its forces in the region. You find even the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden a part of this area of control that China has said this is their primary purpose right now is to build in that Silk Road initiative the chain of pearls that we were talking about earlier is all of those seaports that they have been building relationships with or just buying outright in this Indo-Pacific region. And the secret to the survival of nations that are pro-West like South Korea and Japan are being able to get supplies and oil through these trade routes that go right through the South China Sea up to them. This is where China knows all they have to do is keep doing what they're doing, building more military bases on man made islands in the South China Sea. Just keep pushing it. Who's going to stop them? Is the United States of America going to intentionally go into this region and try to stop this expansion of China? Hardly. It's not going to happen. And of course, you see how that obviously will affect the Middle East, because remember, the eyes of all Bible prophecy are Jerusalem, and the scripture looks from there around the world to see what's going on and to say what's going to happen. So, friends, as we see how this is coming to play and coming to pass all around us, don't be frustrated, don't be afraid, because we've been told ahead what the nations of the world are going to look like in that final set of battles before Jesus comes. So, if the nations are lining up that way, especially the great red dragon of China as she lines up that way, then we know we're getting even closer to the promised fulfillment of the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. So, friends, even though you see these things happening, you've got to speak up and say what's appropriate on the correct side. But recognize that it doesn't mean we will necessarily win that battle. Because for a short time, the Bible tells us the saints are going to be under the power of this end time beast before Jesus comes. So, friends, we've got to live with a clear conscience. We've got to say the right things. We've got to question our own government. When you say, really, you want to have this great relationship with a nation that's got 1 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps right now, that's shutting down Christians, destroying churches, and telling them they can't practice their faith, literally rewriting the Bible to line up with the Chinese communist philosophy. I mean, you can't be silent about those things. But friends, don't be surprised if you discover that what we are trying to get across is falling on deaf ears. Because in these days, we've already been told there is a great beast arising. And what that beast is going to try to ultimately do, remember, Satan is at the center focus of this beast. He is the one really in control. I think it's no accident that that beast is described, that satanic control is described as a dragon in these end times. And the objective of that beast is going to be world domination. That's always been Satan's plan, dominate the world. And if anybody gets in their way, especially this tiny little nation of Israel, then they will have to be taken out. When they try that, they will discover that the nation of Israel has a greater defender than even the United States. That's the Lord our God. And that'll be made quite evident when they decide to flex their muscles, when they think they are finally invincible. So, friends, keep watching, keep looking out, and comparing the headlines to the scripture so that you'll know the biblical perspective on everything that's going on. Hope you'll be in church somewhere tomorrow on the Lord's Day, and then join us every day next week, Monday through Friday, as we wake up in the Word, grow stronger in Scripture. God bless you. You have a great day in Him.